Part 117. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1162. Dark Place. No. This is the real forbidden way, growing immortal seeds. The Silent One raised his eyes and changed his expression, looked at the throne of darkness, and said, "That body of yours, the forbidden way, was created by the one on the dark throne. He single-handedly created the fifth great civilization. As for the forbidden way, no one can practice it since the death of the 12 ancestors of the ancestors and the end of 10,000 paths entered darkness. Because, after the body existing on the dark throne stopped and chose to declare itself, no one can find the path of cultivation in the ways of immortals, saints, gods, and chaos, and no one can find the long-lost immortal seeds. Throughout the ages, since the four great extinctions, there is only one person on the dark throne who can trace back time and space, reverse the path of immortality, pick up the holy source, seize the divine principles, and travel in the sea of chaos. Now, in the forbidden world, there is a vision of an immortal seed. Could it be that another person existing on the dark throne took action? But on the dark throne, the existence just said lightly. He didn't take any action. I haven't even left the village, I'm still the nascent soul. Hearing this, the silent man frowned. The existence on the dark throne is an eye that looks at its other body and cannot lie. But, who can do it by planting immortal seeds? No matter who it is unacceptable for anyone to become an immortal in this era. The Silent One looked at the existence on the dark throne and said coldly, "If this is the case, the dark dome will take action when angry." The being on the dark throne just yawned long and said, "Then, just try it." After saying that, there was a rhythmic breathing sound from the dark throne, as if the being on the dark throne had fallen asleep. In the entire darkness, only this rhythmic breathing sound was left, and it suddenly became silent. It's like the calm before the storm. The Silent One suddenly turned around and bowed deeply toward the dark door deep in the darkness. At this moment, the dark door of peace in the depths of darkness suddenly opened wide. From the dark door, a big dark hand suddenly poked out. This big hand is like a giant beast that dominates the world in the ancient black universe, making the entire dark space boil. The big hand emits a terrifying black mist, billowing like a sea of clouds. This is supreme. In front of the dark throne, the 6 disciples of the Silent One suddenly changed their expressions in horror at this moment. They knelt directly on the ground, shivering, and were extremely respectful, not even daring to raise their heads. The dark space seemed to be about to explode. The dark space was like a thin ice surface that could not withstand the rolling thunderclaws and was about to be annihilated. The silent man lowered his head chakra and saluted the passing hand with the highest silent etiquette. Storms of wind, thunder, and a hand that could suppress the universe and the heavens passed through the sky. The entire dark space was silent, and only the pleasant and calm breathing continued. Even though such horrific scenes appeared, the existence on the dark throne was still sleeping soundly, regardless of it. And that big dark hand, in just a moment, had directly crossed the dark space and touched the edge of the forbidden world. Boom! At this moment, the entire taboo world suddenly became like a thin piece of paper, and the whole area suddenly trembled. In the forbidden world, Xuanhuan feels that all living beings seem to be facing a huge threat at this moment. Their hearts are excited and they are distracted. Between heaven and earth, there are even more terrifying illusions happening. Rivers are flowing backwards, the earth is cracked and cut off, vegetation is drying up, mountains are falling apart, the sun is exploding, sea water is evaporating, and the moon and stars are falling. There is rain of blood in the depths of the sky, all over the 9 continents, and rivers of blood flow in all 9 continents. All this did not really happen, but the heaven and earth were warning, informing the people of the world in advance of the coming disaster. This kind of disaster vision has spread all over the 9 continents, and hundreds of millions of living beings are terrified. What's happening? Is the end coming? Just a moment ago, visions of heaven and earth spread across the 9 continents, and it was suspected that the Emperor of Heaven was enlightened. Why now? There is a destructive energy, spreading all over the sky is weeping blood, and the earth is wailing. The vitality is dormant, the world is sad and angry, this is the dark enemy is coming. Is the black disaster coming? Countless powerful cultivators are walking out of the retreat at this moment, full of despair. Is this Qi machine surpassing the great emperor? It's over, who can compete? There is no heavenly emperor in the world, but with this kind of power, even if the former Xuanhuan emperor is resurrected, it is impossible to stop him. Where is the great emperor in the world? Darkness is going to destroy the world. Where are the emperors who are above us? Many people are shouting and praying. However, that big hand of darkness directly broke through the obstruction of the forbidden world, like a billions of miles of black river, sweeping across the entire 9 continents and heading towards Xuanhuan continent to suppress it. This is the most powerful person in the darkness, targeting the enlightened person of Xuanhuan. I understand, the catastrophe of darkness has not yet come, but there are strong men in Xuanhuan continent who have taken the step of becoming immortals. This is a true sign of taboo, so they will not be tolerated by the darkness. What the darkness is really afraid of is the fairy seed. At this moment, there are many knowledgeable people in the world who understand the true purpose of the dark hand. No matter what darkness wants to destroy is the hope of our forbidden world. Where is the great emperor in the world? How can he sit back and watch? Countless people in the world are shouting. How can I allow you to set foot in the forbidden world in darkness? At this moment, one of the 9 continents, Tiandi continent, the hometown of the extinct Xuanhuan emperor, suddenly heard a sound that swept the world, and there was a figure, standing with hands behind his back, with a strong aura of fighting against heaven and earth. That was a man. He came from the almost destroyed Tiandi continent, with the heavenly emperor's avenue manifesting under his feet. His long hair was fluttering, and his aura shocked the world, but his right hand was empty only with its sleeve. Xuanhuan Emperor, is Xuanhuan Emperor? Isn't he dead yet? No, those are his residual thoughts, the great aspirations he left behind, and his unyielding fighting spirit. Xuanhuan has been fighting all his life. He is a disabled body, but he has realized that the will of the Emperor of Heaven has never stopped. He's coming. He's coming. At this moment, everyone was excited and shouting. This figure made countless people cry. The Emperor of Heaven has been destroyed, but his thoughts will never die. Emperor Xuanhuan, do you have another thought? The veteran is here and is willing to fight with you again. The Emperor of Heaven, there are still people in the Emperor of Heaven's old castle. The Emperor of Heaven is not alone. There are still passionate men in time. At this moment, as the shadow of the Xuanhuan Emperor reappeared, among the heavenly emperors, there were suddenly powerful figures converging towards the sky above Xuanhuan continent. It was a group of old veterans. Many of them were old and had missing limbs, but they all appeared at this moment. The great holy sword Fufeng is here, willing to fight again. A crippled old man with both hands chopped off and only one leg left came in a wheelchair. He had pale hair and held his broken sword in his mouth. Is there anyone in the world who still remembers my name as the Twilight Hammer God? Ha ha ha. A big man came with a huge hammer on his back. He was blind, and half of his body was plunged into darkness and decay, but he was laughing at this moment. We're all here, I'm here too, we old brothers, these defeated soldiers, see you again. An old man holding a spear came over. There was a big black hole in his chest, oozing pus. Between heaven and earth, a total of more than a dozen powerful beings appeared. They were all veterans of the Xuanhuan Emperor. They once followed the Xuanhuan Emperor into the darkness. They were the only remaining achievements of the Xuanhuan Emperor. They're all here. The shadow of Emperor Xuanhuan, who had lost one of his right hands, spoke softly. He raised his eyes, looked at the big dark hand, and said coldly, "Supreme in the dark, you passed." He raised his left hand and thrust his palm towards the dark hand. Kill. Behind Emperor Xuanhuan, many veterans also took action. They are all extremely powerful and can be called kings, great sages, etc. A mere afterimage. In the black fog, there was an indifferent voice. The black fog filled the air and wanted to suppress the world. The shadow of the Xuanhuan emperor and the attacks of many veterans were all annihilated before that big hand. Seeing this scene, everyone in the world is desperate. Even the Emperor of Heaven can't stop him, so how can he fight? She is the hope of the Forbidden Way. Emperor Xuanhuan looked at the big dark hand, pointed at Subakian on Jindi mountain, and said, "Guard her away." After saying that, he waved his hand, and the veterans behind him were all sent to Jindi mountain by his great supernatural powers. But he didn't look back, looked at the dark hand, and said softly, "As the Emperor of Heaven, I cannot protect this world." Xuanhuan is ashamed. He whispered that he was going to die with his last remaining image. In the vast sky and earth, the air of darkness rolls in, and the supreme power suppresses the heaven and earth. The emperors in the world disappear and the people are panicked. His crippled and thin afterimage looks so lonely in front of the big hand of darkness. I faced the big hand of darkness alone, but never regretted it. The hand of darkness is about to fall, and the afterimage of Emperor Xuanhuan is like a candle in the strong wind, about to be extinguished. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1163. Between heaven and earth, black mist is billowing, and the supreme hand is destroying everything. The afterimage of the Emperor of War is no match and will eventually be destroyed. The Emperor of Heaven is about to perish. Is this the power of darkness? Just a big hand can destroy the world. No wonder all the great emperors in heaven and earth have disappeared. Who can resist? The Emperor's court in war heaven has collapsed. At this moment, the whole world is in despair. The black mist is billowing and will destroy the Emperor of Heaven. But, at this moment, suddenly, there was yellow smoke billowing from the sky and the earth, and a Nahi bridge stretched directly beside Emperor Xuanhuan. The black and white chess lines crisscross, the forces of yin and yang are intertwined, the avenues of immortals and demons are dancing together. During the endless changes of life and death, a man with a strong aura came with his hands behind his back. His eyes were black and white, his face was calm, and he appeared next to the afterimage of Emperor Xuanhuan. The power of reincarnation spreads across the world. That is, the Lord of Reincarnation, black and white. He came. Has reincarnation reappeared? The crippled Xuanhuan Emperor suddenly had a strange color on his face. He looked at black and white and said in confusion, "Senior, you." But black and white just said calmly, "I come." After saying that, Nahi bridge extended directly to the feet of Emperor Xuanhuan. Black and white raised his hand, and around him, a round of reincarnation evolved. It was a collection of all kinds of extreme powers in the world, and even the grey fog could be wiped away. The great grind of reincarnation, the evolution of the world, and the huge black hand smashed towards it, its power was shocking. Reincarnation, a kind of supreme avenue, known as the endless life and death. In the darkness, a supreme voice whispered, and a big hand suddenly swept over. In the past, I didn't achieve supreme status. In this life, I'm not even a great emperor. So what if I have the appearance of being supreme? I've been a human being for 2 lifetimes, but I'm just looking for death. The big black hand swept through like a frenzy, reincarnation dominated black and white, and the world-destroying great Emo was shaken violently. The space around black and white was directly annihilated, and the power of destruction swept everything. The Lord of Reincarnation seems to have perished and died. No. Reincarnation, the legendary Supreme Road finally reappeared, but now it has to die. The Emperor of Heaven is defeated, reincarnation is destroyed, and there is no hope in this life. The sounds of despair and wailing come and go. But, right now, rolling yellow smoke suddenly appeared on the top of Jindi Mountain. The Lord of Reincarnation, black and white, reappears on Jindi Mountain. His figure is heroic, and at this moment of reincarnation, it seems that some kind of qualitative change has occurred, and there is a rich black mist in it. That was the source of darkness. He took the source of black mist into the great mill of reincarnation. At the same time, a majestic source of white mist swept into the great mill on his human skin. Suddenly, in the original grind of reincarnation, the power of immortals and demons dimmed, and the game of life and death disappeared. The entanglement of darkness and white mist covers the entire demo, like two huge dragon shadows, fighting each other endlessly and regenerating in cycles. In the end, the source energy of darkness and the source energy of white mist completely turned into two yin and yang fish, constantly feeding on each other, reaching a certain balance. At this moment, the black and white auras suddenly changed. Around him, endless thunder, earth energy, etc. were entangled, and the breath of the mountains, rivers, and earth from Xuanhuan continent and Wanmu continent were rushing towards him. No. Lord of Reincarnation, are you taking away our authority? At this moment, on Jindi Mountain, the Earth Emperor and the Jin Emperor were horrified. They have finished parasitizing Xuanhuan and have been living in Jindi Mountain, waiting for darkness to fall. But now, things are beyond their imagination. The Lord of Reincarnation actually wants to become the great emperor, and the way he achieves it is simply domineering. To seize the source energy of the supreme power in the darkness and achieve the great tribulation of reincarnation, they also want to plunder the mark of the heart of heaven and the power of creation that they already control. This is unacceptable. You dare. Emperor Jin was furious, turned into a huge bird, and flew towards black and white. To touch my emperor fruit is like killing me, and I will fight you until death. The 2D also shouted loudly. He evolved into a pangolin body, which was like a mountain, and he actually wanted to charge into the black and white Taoist landscape. Facing the supreme darkness, they cowered in fear, but now facing the black and white Emperor Jindao, they took action bravely. At the same time, the huge hand of darkness, billowing in the black mist, was also furious. How brave! With your supreme energy, you achieve the position of emperor? Do you think there is anyone who can protect you in this life? The supreme voice shook the sky, and the terrifying big hand almost crushed the entire Xuanhuan continent. This is the wrath of the supreme being. It is a great shame and humiliation for a supreme being to have his original energy taken away to achieve the throne. The sky above Jindi Mountain was completely covered by black mist. The black clouds pressed down on the mountain and threatened to collapse, and the earth was about to collapse. Even though he is the Emperor of War, even though he is the Lord of Black and White Reincarnation, even though his talent is supreme, but he is not supreme after all. Facing the supreme, even the Emperor of Heaven is powerless. This is an eternal gap, an insurmountable chasm. Even though he had followed Li Fan to quell the chaos in his previous life, he had not actually reached the supreme state. Boom! The thunder in the 9 heavens, the mother energy of the earth, and the sea of grass and trees all collapsed, and that big hand was going to crush the entire Jindi Mountain. No. Fight him. This girl has walked a truly forbidden path. She is hope. If you want to touch her, the only way is to step on our corpses. Kill. At this moment, the great sage Fuifeng, the Twilight Hammer God, etc., all had red eyes and rushed forward to die. I can't fight. Emperor Xantian's eyes were like stars and he said, I will do my best to send her away. His figure almost disappeared, evolving into an avenue that transcended space, extending in front of Subakian. He wanted to use his last strength to send Subakian away. Want to leave? The indifferent supreme voice sounded, and suddenly there was a black sky waterfall, directly blocking the way of Emperor Zhan Tian. It's a pity, there is only one residual thought left. If the physical body is still there, if I risk my life and become the Emperor of Heaven, I might be able to send you away. Emperor Zhan Tian smiled sadly, with only a deep apology in his eyes, and said, "Sorry. His body will dissipate." The great black and white emperor is also holding up the reincarnation great mill at this moment. A lot of the black mist has been eliminated, but it is still too little. The black mist formed by his black great mill is just a drop in the bucket. Do you really want this girl to die? At this moment, a huge stone gate suddenly appeared in the endless sky of Jindi Mountain. Someone was whispering in the stone gate. If we take action, the true form of the supreme darkness will definitely come. You and I have survived till now, so why bother? That's all, that's all. The immortals, the emperor of samsara, the shadow of the emperor of war, will all pass away. I can't bear it, but there is nothing I can do. We have fallen from the sky a long time ago and will die at any time. Even if we try our best, we can only get in the way. The price is too high. After all, no one in that door made a move, they could only sit back and watch. Wow, you old turtles in the gate of 10,000 ways, are you still going to do it this time? Take action now and become your own people. Subakian is related to that person. On Jindi Mountain, the big black dog was keenly aware of the appearance of the gate of 10,000 daos and shouted loudly. You evil beast, how dare you yell at us? A cold voice sounded from the gate of 10,000 daos, saying. That person has passed away, so what if he is related to him? If you want me to take action, you can go and bring back his body that fell into the darkness and give it to us, and we will protect this person for him, how about that? When the big black dog heard this, his face became gloomy and he stopped talking. In the forbidden world, no one dares to take action anymore. The big hand has arrived. At this very moment. Boom. Between heaven and earth, a waterfall suddenly fell from the sky above the 9 heavens, as if someone had drawn time and space with one stroke. This stroke directly shrouded Jindi Mountain, protecting Subakian, Xuanhuan, and others, preventing the terrifying hand of darkness from advancing even an inch. What? In the darkness, Supreme was shocked and said. What does this woman have to do with you? We don't know anything in advance, everything is negotiable, please don't take action. The Supreme voice actually trembled. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1164. Small Village. In the small courtyard, the blank rice paper was covered with many mysterious patterns, but the middle was still blank. Li Fan put down a stroke at this moment. The scene painted by the stroke is very similar to the inscriptions on the 2 ancient bronze lamps. Master, what do you want to draw? Next to him, Gongya spoke doubtfully. She had seen her master paint landscapes and sunsets, but she had never seen him paint such strange paintings. This looks, actually a bit similar to the wall calendar used by mortals. Li Fan heard this and said calmly. I didn't want to do it, but now, this is the only way. He actually has no interest in the calendar left by the dancing master. After all, that wall calendar looks weird and doesn't look normal at first glance. However, the prophecy left by the god of Tiao is related to the life and death of many people in the village. Gotta figure it out. And now, among the many clues left behind by Master Tiao, the only ones of some value seem to be those torn out calendars. He wants to recreate those calendars. After saying this, he made another stroke. Now, the taboo world spans 9 continents. In Xuanhuan, a terrifying sky waterfall suddenly descended and landed on Jindi Mountain, directly covering Subakian, Duguyuking, and others. The sky waterfall brought out by the stroke is like a space of time and space, containing endless mystery. This stroke enveloped Jindi Mountain. In an instant, Jindi Mountain seemed to have turned into an endless ancient fairy land, with fairy spirits deriving from it, immortal energy originating in all directions, and fairy magic medicines spreading all over the earth, constantly sprouting. Where Subakian and others were, it was as if they had entered the ancient immortal time and space, when everything was about to sprout. Even that terrifying supreme hand was blocked. Moreover, the darkness is supreme, there seems to be fear. At the same time, in the depths of the sky and in the gate of 10,000 Daos, there were bursts of exclamations. What's going on? This sum is supreme. In the forbidden world, is there such a powerful supreme? No. It doesn't look like supreme. Many ancient beings spoke with surprise and uncertainty. They were all once supremely powerful, but now, the waterfall caused by the stroke actually makes them somewhat unpredictable. And, at this moment, the second heavenly waterfall has fallen. At this moment, the 2 heavenly waterfalls suddenly created a space-time. The first thing is space. The second stroke is time. The second stroke fell, and an ancient vision appeared. That is an ancient giant tree that grows against the sky, bears mysterious flat peaches, and supports the heaven and earth. That is the pale fire tree burning forever, triggering the fairy fire that burns everything, shining in the sky. That is the ancient Bodhi tree as still as a virgin, sprouting a transcendent Zen path, reaching the other shore. Each very rare thing that only exists in distant fairy tales appears in various visions under the illumination of 2 heavenly waterfalls. The entire Jindi Mountain and the entire Xuanhuan continent were shrouded in this sacred immortal vision. How is this going? No, the peach tree, not the fire tree, the Bodhi tree, the original divine grape, aren't these ancient immortal species that have long since died out? Could it be that the immortal Dao is coming again? There was a huge earthquake in Zhuzhou. At this moment, many of the emperor's eyes that had been hiding could not help but open and close in the distance. Is it him? No, isn't he already buried in the darkness? How can he still take action? Could it be that this is his backup plan? Is the time and space of the immortal realm about to reappear? This is too scary. It is actually necessary to summon the time and space of a lost civilization from the past years. How is it possible? What's impossible, if it's really him, if it's really, let alone the immortal world, even if the Dark Dome is destroyed, it's not surprising. In the gate of 10,000 Daos, those ancient beings were all murmuring, somewhat in a daze. Immortal time and space, no. You actually want to let the immortal time and space come back to this life. The billowing black mist was forcing them to retreat hundreds of millions of miles at this moment. And in the darkness, the supreme voice was extremely shocking, saying, "Have you forgotten the ancient covenant? If you take action, you will start a war, and no one around you will survive." Supreme is threatening. However, everyone in the world was shocked when they heard this voice. That's supreme darkness, but you don't dare to target him personally, but you can only use the people around that mysterious existence to threaten him. What kind of existence is he? Could it be that it is supreme? Or, better than supreme? But, right now, a small mountain village, in a small courtyard. Li Fan suddenly bit his finger lightly. He looked indifferent and wrote the third stroke with a drop of blood. The vast 9 continents. Between heaven and earth, the third waterfall falls. The first stroke builds the world. Time for the second build. However, the first 2 strokes are not the most terrifying. When the third heavenly waterfall falls, it seems that the heavens are trembling, and all living beings feel a great throbbing, whether they are evil or good, whether they are strong still weak. At this moment, everyone's heart suddenly surged, and a kind of instinctive arose from their hearts. The third stroke fell, with a bloody light. Between the heaven and the earth, there is a chi machine, heading towards the billowing black mist where the darkness is supreme. You actually use real blood, how dare you? The darkness roared, and then, he turned around and ran away. The billowing black mist simply left at a speed that transcended space and the world. Its speed was enough to make the Emperor of Heaven stunned. However, that chi machine was faster than any other and still chopped down. Boom! The billowing black mist suddenly dissipated before it could completely escape, and the Supreme Hand spread out. The Supreme Being never even had a chance to make a sound. At the same time, the chi machine seemed more like it was cutting into the darkness. Seeing this scene, the entire forbidden world fell silent. The Supreme Darkness has been defeated. There's no energy left. How on earth did you do it? In our forbidden world, is there still something supreme? All 9 continents were shocked. At the same time, under the 3 heavens, the sky was instantly completed, and the brilliant light of the immortal path enveloped the entire Zhu. The forbidden world has become one with the immortal time and space. At the same time, the vast original energy of the immortal path burst out in the sky and the earth. The time and space of the immortal Dao coincides with the forbidden world of this life, and at the same time, the chi of the immortal Dao reappears. On Jindi Mountain. This is, that person. On Jindi Mountain, the shadow of Xuanhuan Emperor suddenly became excited at this moment. Facing the 3 terrifying sky waterfalls, he saluted directly and was extremely respectful. Xiaocan, meet you, senior. He calls himself Xiaocan, and calls the owner of the 2-stroke waterfall, his senior. The Jin Emperor and the Earth Emperor were stunned, trembling, and extremely frightened. How come? That's darkness, the Supreme Being is coming. As a result, they were defeated, quietly and devastatingly. Is that one still alive? They all asked tremblingly. But only Black and White smiled slightly and said, "Do you think I'm here to die? I just took advantage of the supreme darkness to take the source energy and use it." He smiled. At the same time, in the Gate of 10,000 Ways, a group of fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Goexin. Chapter 1165. At the same time, many of the supreme experts in the Gate of 10,000 Daos were extremely shocked at this moment. Who is swiping the pen? A few strokes can actually kill the Supreme. It's nothing to kill the Supreme Being. The most terrifying thing is that the Immortal Way has reappeared. The world is actually filled with the light of the Immortal Way, and the origin that arrived first appears. Throughout the ages, the only one who has been able to do this is. At this moment, the Gate of 10,000 Daos suddenly became silent, and a group of former Supremes all thought of a possibility. Could it be that person is really still alive? If he is really still alive, we just missed a great opportunity. Yes, if he is still alive, as long as we form a good relationship with him, it is possible to live another life. He can save us, but at this moment, these strong men all regretted it. "You bitch, are you cheating on us?" A strong man roared and spoke towards the big black dog on Jindi Mountain. If that person is really alive, this dead dog will definitely know. However, it didn't say anything just now. But on Jindi Mountain, the big black dog was disdainful and said, "A bunch of cowards, I specifically reminded you to take action, but you got cold feet. Can you blame me for this? You were given a chance, but you couldn't seize it." Hearing this, the group of strong men in the Gate of 10,000 Daos all had fire but could not release it. Wrong. However, at this moment, someone in the gate of 10,000 Daos suddenly said in surprise. There's something wrong with this immortal time and space, there's something wrong with it, go back. The sound was extremely frightening. As this voice sounded from the gate of 10,000 Daos, in the vast world, above the 9 continents, deep in the endless fairy light, suddenly a dark and dead floating soil slowly emerged. The dark and silent floating soil was filled with endless black mist, which was even thicker than what was brought by the supreme hand of darkness before. That dark floating soil appeared, and immediately, the origin of the immortal way and the light of the immortal way that filled the entire world suddenly changed. The immortal energy turned into black energy, and the immortal light turned into black light. Everyone is shocked. No, this is not the origin of immortality, this is the origin of darkness, don't touch it anymore. Stop practicing, the original energy will change from the root, and big problems will occur. No, if such a source appears, if we practice it, we will all directly become dark rot slaves. Originally, the appearance of the origin of the immortal Dao caused great joy in the world, and everyone was pleasantly surprised. Many ancient cultivators were even more excited, and started practicing quickly, hoping to go back and make up for the incomplete foundation of the immortal Dao. However, this change from the source now scares everyone in the world. The immortal time and space is extinct. That floating earth is made of the death of all living beings in the immortal time and space. This darkness occupies. From the gate of 10,000 ways, frightened voices came one after another. Even though that person can recall the immortal time and space, the immortal time and space is already dead. The deepest part of the immortal time and space is darkness, the darkness that destroyed the immortal time and space. He brought back the time and space of immortality. So what if the aura of immortality can appear? It will be polluted by the darkness. The gate of 10,000 Daos, at this moment, disappeared directly and did not dare to appear again. On Jindi Mountain, Emperor Xuanhuan looked at that side of time and space, with an unprecedented despair in his eyes. The time and space of the immortal path, are all dead. The source of the immortal path has been polluted by darkness. We took the wrong path back then. At the end of the 10,000 paths, we have to trace the footsteps of that person and go against time and space, but she faces only darkness. Has she, already? He told the truth about a corner of his past. During the time of Emperor Xuanhuan, they once attacked the darkness, but later they all died. There is only one person at the end of 10,000 paths, but he holds the 3 lamps of origin and enters the darkness. And at the end of one Dao, head to the darkness to retrace the path Li Fan took. After all, the taboo civilization was created by Li Fan. Before he set out on the forbidden path, he had traveled against time and space in the dark vault to obtain the origin of the ways of immortals, saints, gods, and chaos. Wan Dao ending wants to take the path he took. But now, the origin of the time and space of the immortal path has been polluted, the source of the immortal path is darkness, and the road to the end of the path is destined to be a dead end. The dark floating soil slowly emerged from the depths of the immortal time and space. On top of the dark floating soil, there is actually a huge staircase. It is the indescribable avenue, the steps evolved over time, the traces left behind by time and space, and the remaining ruins after the river of time was cut off. And on the steps of the years, there was actually a figure sitting cross-legged. It was a dark creature. He was motionless. In front of him, a dark rose bloomed. This creature, along with this floating soil, completely descended into the vast forbidden world. The creatures on the dark floating soil slowly opened their eyes. At this moment, the rules of heaven and earth, and the destiny of nature, suddenly seemed to be caught in some kind of power. The whole world suddenly fell into a state of stagnation. In a certain cave, an old man felt the coming of the immortal aura, and excitedly wanted to push open the coffin lid and climb out of the coffin, but he only managed to crawl out, as if he had turned into a stone sculpture and could no longer move. In a certain river, a carp had been nourished by the immortal aura and jumped out of the water, but now it could not fall back. Even the water droplets brought out by the fish's tail became stagnant in the form of splashes. In a certain family, a young master held a beautiful maid in his arms. He was half pushing her, but he couldn't move forward for a moment. The longing in his eyes froze along with his body. The whole world stopped. The rules of the operation of heaven and earth and the authority of creation seemed to have expired at this moment. On Jindi mountain, Jindi and Tudi are kneeling like kneeling statues made of stone. Black and White stood with his hands behind his back, like an invincible general facing off against all enemies. His long hair floated but could not fall down for a long time. Emperor Xantian's regrets cannot be moved anymore. The big black dog raised his legs, as if he was about to use his magical power, but was held back. Long Xuanhuan, Tuguyuking, and Subakian were all silent. All this is just because the creatures on the dark floating soil opened their eyes. He walked up from the dark floating soil and glanced at Subakian. At this moment, Subakian suddenly felt that she had emerged from a certain state, and she had regained her ability to move freely. She looked at the dark creature in front of her, her face changed slightly, and she said, "You, who are you?" The dark creature said, "The Stopper." "Stopper?" Subakian said. "The whole world can't move because of you." The Stopper said, "Not the whole world. At least not the one behind you." He said, "That one is still here, we won't kill you, you can leave alive. But please take something back with you. Today's 4 major civilizations of time and space, my master has left tokens to guard them, and the immortal way will never end. Even if the person behind you can recall the lost time and space, it will no longer be possible to obtain the origin of the immortal way from it like before." He said softly. "He can't get it, let alone get it for these ants, because the only source of immortality is the dark rose. My master admires him very much. He can lead you to live a good life. All you need is him to abide by the agreement made in the past and stop violating the laws of the universe." Hearing this, Subakian looked shocked. She understood, this person wanted to talk to the master through her. It was the first time in so many years that she saw such a powerful creature. "Maybe I should tell you something." Although her realm was far inferior to the one in front of her, Subakian had no fear at all. She said calmly, "You are threatening my master, and doing so is dangerous." He smiled slightly and said, "Is it? Can you see the roses on the steps of the immortal path? Even if your master sees this rose, he must bow his head." When Subakian heard the words, he raised his eyes proudly and looked towards the steps deep in the dark floating earth. "If you look any further, you will die and even your master will not be able to save you." He reminded him softly that he was very superior and calm. However, Subakian said calmly, "But, what you call rose seems to have disappeared." Hearing this, he was suddenly startled, and then he turned back subconsciously. "I saw that dark rose deep in the dark floating soil, on the steps of time. Actually, disappeared. And deep in the dark floating soil, there was a figure clearly running away, as fast as a shooting star." The Stopper was immediately confused. Dance like a master. You're giving back my master's flowers." "Yesterday, I parked my car in the service area to catch up, but ended up falling asleep in the rush. So embarrassing. Sorry." Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1166. He was a little confused at this moment. That dark rose is his master's token. Originally, the immortal time and space had long been extinct, but as a result, at that time, that person actually went against the immortal time and space, traced back to the time and space of the four major civilizations, took out the origin, and took that step. Later, in order to prevent similar people from appearing in the world again, Xuanhuan's master left a token, completely polluting the broken immortal era, and guarding the steps of the years. Who can covet what belongs to his master? Even if Supreme comes, he can only lower his eyebrows. However, now people actually let them go? Depend on. At this moment, Xuanhuan's mentality simply collapsed. What the hell is this? Moreover, the entire taboo world is obviously already under his immobility method. Let alone the entity, even the thoughts cannot move. There are actually people who can still move, and even step into the dark fairy land. There is only one person besides that person who can do this. A great dancer. Because it is the path of ignorance that jumps up to the gods, knowing everything. In a sense, overcoming everything is supreme, taking half a step before many supremes, which is the most perverted of the supreme paths. The soul of the great dancing god appears. He gritted his teeth, with hatred in his eyes. At the same time, he was also confused. Even if the soul of Master Tiao reappeared, how could he get close to the Master's dark rose? Even if the physical body of the god of dance is still there and at its peak, facing this dark rose, he will still be suppressed. You can't escape, a mere soul cannot show true supreme power. The stopper murmured, and immediately chased the person who followed the dark rose. Because the dark rose is so important and is the foundation for guarding the dark fairy land. However, before he could move, he suddenly had a premonition of something and suddenly raised his eyes to look at the dark fairy road. I saw a drop of blood falling from nowhere above the dark fairy land. That drop of blood contained rolling vitality, like the sun, so dazzling that it evaporated the endless black energy bred in the dark fairy land. No. This drop of blood contains the origin of immortality. Xuanhuan's expression changed drastically and he said, could it be that the person who sacrificed himself to obtain the origin of immortality wants to reappear in the immortal land? In this way, the immortal land will reappear in this era, and the cultivators in the world will complete the foundation of the immortal way. However, he will fall from that realm. Isn't he afraid, once the realm falls, it's just supreme? He actually hesitated. The fairy land reappears, and the darkness cannot tolerate it. But, if this can make that person's realm fall, then there will be a chance to kill that person. The great master walked along my teacher's flower, and then used a drop of blood to evolve the origin of immortality and nourish the former immortal land. Xuanhuan narrowed his eyes slightly, and he seemed to have noticed the conspiracy. The dancer and the dancer teamed up to put on a play. And he was fooled. That's it. The dark fairy land was infected by his blood, and the fairy land reappeared, and it couldn't be stopped. He whispered, then suddenly took a step forward and disappeared from the spot. He has left the forbidden world. The moment it stops, it disappears. The rules of heaven and earth and the destiny of the entire world suddenly seem to come to life again. Hey, what happened just now? Why didn't I climb out of the coffin for a long time? In a certain cave, the old man climbed out of the coffin. Snapped. In a certain river, a goldfish that had been in the air for a long time fell directly into the river, splashing with water. Master, why don't you move? The pretty little maid teased the young master. The whole world has recovered again. At the same time, above the forbidden world, a vast fairy land was officially formed. The fairy land is endless, and a drop of blood turns into a bloody river, rolling by. The dark floating soil and dark air have all evaporated. The dry earth is nourished by blood and water, and all things sprout. A tree broke out of the ground, but in just a short moment, it had grown to a height of 7 or 8 meters, and every leaf was shining with the light of immortality. Green grass sprouted on the earth, and the tender green turned into a sea of immortality. The immortal land stands on the 9 continents, and the vast immortal qi flows down from the immortal land and spreads to Xuanhuan, so that the creatures in Xuanhuan are also nourished by the immortal qi. The immortal land, the legendary immortal land, is reborn in this life. God, how is this possible? Didn't I evolve? Immortal Deo, such an ancient vocabulary only exists in some sporadic records, but it actually appeared today. Great, there are countless immortal species in that fairy land. Hurry up, fly up, we might be able to make up for the shortcomings of the forbidden way. At this moment, there was a sensation in the world. Besides those who were immersed in cultivation, there were more people flying towards the immortal land to find the immortal seed. On Jindi Mountain. After Zhizhe left, Black and White, Zhan Tiandi, Long Xuanhuan, Duguyuking and others also returned to normal. Let's go. The expressions of Emperor Jin and Emperor Tu changed greatly, and they turned around to run away. They did not see the appearance of the stopper at all. When the stopper came, they fell into a state of ignorance and inaction. However, they saw with their own eyes that the existence of 3 strokes defeated the supreme darkness. Big Hand. Now, Black and White Earth and Emperor Zhan Tian are here, how can they not panic? However, they had no chance to escape. Emperor Zhan Tian waved his hand, and his big hand was like the sky. Jin Emperor evolved into its prototype, fluttering its wings but unable to fly out of the palm of his hand. He directly slapped him on Jin Emperor Mountain. I can't even stand up. Ah! The Earth Emperor was even more miserable. The black and white cycle of reincarnation suppressed him. His body kept disappearing and he was almost dead. Seeing this scene, everyone was in awe. Emperor Tu and Emperor Jin, 2 very ancient emperors, were unable to even fight back at this moment. However, I can accept it after thinking about it. After all, although Zhan Tian Emperor only has one thought left, he is still in the realm of the Emperor of Heaven and once dared to challenge the darkness. As for Black and White, he controlled reincarnation in his previous life and almost achieved the supreme position, but fell. In this life, just after returning to the realm of the great Emperor, he has dared to take the supreme source of darkness for his own use. They are also great emperors, but in front of the black and white emperors, the golden emperor and others are really not enough. Wrong. However, at this time, the black and white emperor suddenly heard something. He looked at Subakian and said, "Senior, do you eat pangolins?" Hearing this, Subakian was stunned for a moment, and then said uncertainly, "Should, not eat." Although Master is a foodie, he is also very particular about food ingredients. He never eats animals like monkeys and pangolins. Only then did Black and White nodded, completely obliterating the 2 did. The Earth Emperor turned into spots of light all over the sky and returned to the world. On the other side, Jin Emperor had been defeated by Zhan Tian Emperor, and the big black dog stepped forward and mounted it and the other big golden birds on Jin Emperor Mountain. Prepare to take it back to the village for a feast. We will enter the immortal land to search for immortal seeds. Black and White looked at Subakian and said, "Please say hello to Senior Li on behalf of Black and White." Subakian nodded. Immediately, Black and White took one step towards the fairy land. At the same time, many powerful people in the secret world of reincarnation, such as Huo Ling Mu Jianing, Mu Wanqing, Wu Jianghe, Changsun Changqing, Changsun Bumi, Ji Wudan, etc., also appeared on the fairy land. I'll go take a look too. Even the afterimage of Emperor Zhan Tian has gone to the immortal land. It is conceivable that if Subai sets this precedent, there will be countless strong people on the path of immortality appearing in the world. Master uses his own efforts to reopen the path to immortality for the sake of the world. Long Xuanhuan and Duguyuking both murmured, "Wang, let's go back to the village for a feast." At this time, the big black dog spoke. "Wait a minute, dead dog, what to do with these big leeches and big lizards? They can't be eaten." Wu Dade spoke. Subakian said. Well, I'm going to let them go. Hearing this, Xuanhuan and others were a little confused. Let him go? These two people are the great emperors in the darkness. Junior sister Baijian, you can't be stupid, these two are not good people. Wu Dade was all anxious. However, Subakian had already continued. If I plant medicine in their landscaping, they will become idiots. And when they go back to the darkness, they can continue to provide nutrients for the medicine I planted. Those medicines are very important. They are special medicines I cultivated to kill dark creatures. When they are fully grown, they can multiply quickly in the dark dome. I guess, well, they can kill 90% of the emperors over there, right? Hearing this, Duguyuking, Xuanhuan and others choked. I was careless, I forgot, my junior sister is not a human being, I actually thought she would be stupid and kind. Wu Dade shook his head. Women who play drugs are the most dangerous. The big black dog subconsciously took a few steps back. The dog's eyes are complicated. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1167. In the Forbidden World, billions of creatures are now crazy. The immortal land reappears, and the original chi of the immortal way is like a river, falling from the immortal land and pouring into the world. In the immortal land, there are countless immortal spiritual plants growing crazily, including many legendary treasures of the immortal path. Moreover, the supreme retreat in the darkness allowed everyone in the world to temporarily eliminate their fear, and they all wanted to find immortal seeds to make up for the shortcomings of the immortal way again. This can be called the tide of immortality. In this environment, even the demise of the Jin Emperor and the Earth Emperor, no one paid much attention or discussion. In front of the rolling wheels of time and years, their life and death seemed as insignificant as ants. Subakian, Duguyuking, Wu Dade, and Xuanhuan had already left with the big black dog. They were extremely fast, and not long after, they had arrived outside the small mountain village. Seeing the familiar small mountain village, Subakian's beautiful eyes were filled with excitement. Master, I'm back. Wu Dade even yelled and ran back towards the village, saying, Second uncle, come and start the banquet soon. Now. Kaiwanzhou, a small mountain village. Master, what is this? In the small courtyard, Gongya looked at the painting Li Fan had just painted, her eyes full of doubts. This looked really similar to the wall calendar used in the world, but she felt that this wall calendar seemed to contain a world. The drop of Li Fan's blood blended into it, as if the entire calendar was filled with a sense of transcendence. Calendar. Li Fan said calmly, well, the immortal's wall calendar. The wall calendar left behind by the dancing master was finally reappeared. But master, you hurt yourself in order to paint this picture. Gongya spoke with some worry. At the moment when Li Fan dripped blood, she clearly felt that Li Fan's originally watertight and undetectable perfect state had a slight fluctuation. It was as if a part of his Dao foundation was removed along with the drop of blood. She knew that her own realm was nothing to Li Fan, and it was even less possible for her to detect Li Fan's changes, but now even she could detect it. It can only show that Li Fan may have been seriously injured. However, Li Fan just said calmly, these are just minor injuries, it doesn't matter. As he spoke, he looked at the calendar and murmured, there are also saints, gods, and chaos. From the inscriptions on the two bronze lamps, he restored the immortal wall calendar, but 3 of the calendars belonging to the great god Tiao were still missing. He had a hunch that maybe, when he reappeared all those wall calendars, some of the mysteries would be revealed. Master, we are back. At this time, Wu Dade's voice came from outside the door. Li Fan turned around and saw that the courtyard door had been opened and 4 disciples walked in together. Long Xuanhuan, De Guyuking, Wu Dade, Subakian. When Li Fan saw this, he couldn't help but be very happy and said, "Bai Qian, Dade, you are finally back." Wu Dade stepped forward excitedly and said, "Master, I miss you so much. I thought I would never see you again." As he spoke, his voice was actually choked up. Subakian's eyes were filled with thousands of words, but she couldn't say them out for a while. She could only bow deeply and said, "Disciple pays homage to master." In fact, when all the disciples went out this time, they were prepared to never come back, and they would never see each other again. However, even if he went to die, his nostalgia for the small mountain village and Li Fan never diminished, but became more and more profound. Therefore, suddenly returning to the village or courtyard is like a wanderer returning home, which is why they are so emotional. "It's good to be back." Li Fan just smiled slightly and said, "Master will prepare delicious food for you tonight." Upon hearing this, Wu Dade and Subakian were both moved and happy in their eyes. "Hey, Master, is this your new work?" At this time, De Guyuking suddenly saw the calendar on the stone table and spoke in confusion. Many disciples also looked at it. "No. This is not a painting at all, but a vast space of time and space." Long Xuanhuan was shocked. This vast space and time is so similar to the fairy land that recreates the origin of the immortal way. Could it be that the fairy land was reborn because the master painted this painting? De Guyuking also murmured. Several disciples were almost completely convinced at this moment. When the supreme darkness was repulsed, when the stopper appeared, and the dark land of immortality was filled with life again, they had already guessed that it must be the master who took action. However, they didn't know how Li Fan did it. Now it seems that it is just a painting. "Master, I drew the time and space of the immortal path." Subakian whispered the truth. Several people had complicated expressions. The immortal realm of time and space, known as the first great civilization of life that appeared in the dark universe, has been extinct for countless years, and there are often only half a dozen records left in the oldest historical annals. Now, it was painted by master. What a masterpiece! Gongya said. The master shed a drop of blood in order to paint this painting. Hearing this, the expressions of several disciples changed slightly. Master, dropped a drop of blood. This kind of thing has never happened before. In their eyes, Li Fan will always be invincible. No matter how strong the enemy is, he can defeat him with a wave of his hand. However, now a drop of blood is needed. Master, are you okay? Wu Dade spoke with concern. Li Fan smiled and said, "It's just a drop of blood. Why make a fuss? Don't worry about it." As he spoke, he paused again and said, "By the way, Xuanhuan, did you find any ancient bronze lamps this time? After all, if you find 9 ancient bronze lamps, according to the system, you will become invincible." Although this dog system is unreliable, Li Fan still wants to give it a try. After finding everything, see how this dog system can smooth things over. Long Xuanhuan immediately and respectfully took out 2 ancient bronze lamps. They let Xuanhuan and Yu Tian go, but they brought back the lamp of origin that had been lit in the scene. Li Fan was very happy when he saw the 2 bronze lamps. "I actually found it." He took the 2 bronze lamps, glanced at them, and nodded. It is exactly the same as the previous 2 lamps, and the inscriptions are also very similar, and on one of them are some inscriptions about Shinto. Good. Li Fan put away a few lamps and the calendar and said, "You guys will be my teacher for a moment." After speaking, Li Fan took these things and went to the study. He placed the ancient bronze lamp on the table and hung the calendar on the wall. He took out the kerosene left by the dancing master and added kerosene to the two newly arrived lamps. The black flames burned higher. There are 5 lights left. Soon. Li Fan murmured, then turned and left the study. Master, let's go have a banquet. Wu Dade said. When we come back this time, we brought a lot of big birds with us. Li Fan smiled. This great virtue was still as diligent as ever. He didn't forget to bring the prey when he returned to the village. Okay, let's go to the banquet. He immediately took a few disciples and headed towards the open space in the village where the banquet was held. And at this moment, in a dark place somewhere. How can this be? The silent man was stunned, and his body was actually trembling slightly. The supreme darkness takes action and is the invincible existence in the world. However, the big hand was actually chopped off. Moreover, there is also a chi machine that traces back to the dark and supreme hand and cuts it back into the dark door. Not even the dark door is blocking it. The supreme one who took action, I'm afraid he's in danger. The silent one couldn't help but whisper. He had a feeling that although it was just a chi machine, it would definitely cause big trouble to the supreme one who took action. If you don't die, I'm afraid you will be seriously injured. And, the scariest thing is what happened next. Fairyland reappears. Subakian was able to prove the Taoist immortal seed by himself, but he was already tolerated by the darkness and attracted the Supreme to take action to suppress him. Now, the whole world can actually complete the incomplete Taoist foundation. That body of yours must have taken action. The Silent One looked at the Dark Throne. He was extremely sure. In the vast world, what can make the Supreme Being so frightened? Only that one. But the being on the Dark Throne just said lazily. You have crossed a line. Taking action against the people he cares about is just his response. Since you dare to take action, then, you must be prepared to bear the price. The supreme life, the scene that the darkness least wants to see, are just the price. The silent man heard the words and said in a low voice. But, before we took action, we didn't know that person was related to him. In fact, if you know, it is the one who cares. Then Dark Dome will consider it again and again. Unimportant. The being on the Dark Throne said. A violation is a violation, and there is no need to trace the reasons. The Silent One was silent. After a long time, he said. He has brought back the immortal land, and we will not let it go. Once the forbidden path created by the Creator is broken through, it will be one situation after another, the darkness cannot be tolerated. When the immortal land reappears, the world will be able to cultivate the true foundation of the immortal way and obtain immortal seeds. This has already broken through the bottom line of the Dark Dome. The existence on the Dark Throne said. Then keep trying. The Silent One is silent again. Try it. Die if you try, I really don't dare. Try, of course you have to keep trying. At this time, a voice sounded faintly in this dark space. I saw a dark creature coming from nowhere. Wherever he walked, it was as if time and space had frozen. Seeing him, the silent person suddenly became moved and said. Senior brother, why are you here? The person who came was surprisingly the senior brother of Silencer, Zhiji. Zhiji walked to Silence's side and looked at the Dark Throne, but did not salute, but said calmly. The time and space of immortality reappeared. What magical powers did he use? The Dark Throne said calmly. A picture is drawn, just a drop of blood. Zhiji nodded and said. Exactly what I expected. If I'm not wrong, this time, he peeled off his immortal origin and created the immortal land. He has lost the source of the immortal way, and his cultivation is lacking. From that level, even if he has not fallen, he will not be able to stand still, right? Good night, let me take it easy today, I'm too tired and I'm still stuck. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1168. In the dark. The stopper's words sounded softly. The Silent One was also a little surprised. He did not expect that another body existing on the Dark Throne actually lost its own origin and became a fairyland. In this way, he has lost the origin of the immortal path that he took from the years of immortality. Without the origin of the immortal path, it is impossible to maintain his own realm. The Silent One murmured. As the saying goes, the earth is shaking. The being on the Dark Throne also said lightly. Maybe so. This is a consensus. The most important reason why that person back then was so strong was that he had reversed time and space, obtained the origins of the four major life civilizations, and achieved his own success. Now, the origin of the immortal Deo has been returned to the immortal land, and his foundation should be shaken. When you fall from that realm, you may be killed. The stopper opened his mouth and said, "Perhaps we can try the burning universe formation." Hearing this, the silent person's heart moved. Before, many supreme beings in the Dark Vault have deduced how to deal with the Deo body existing on the Dark Throne, and the conclusions they came to are also consistent. Destroy the source and burn the universe. Only when that person's origin is lost and destroyed can the burning universe formation be sure to kill him. But, how can we make that person lose his origin? Many supreme deductions have been made for a long time, and there is almost no way out. But now, many things that the Supreme Being was unable to do in the Dark Vault have actually come true. That person's origin of immortality was lost. What do you mean, senior brother? The Silent One asks. The stopper said. The last incarnation of those people wanted to take the forbidden path. Moreover, this time we took action against those people and asked him to come forward. A drop of blood transformed into immortal land. He said softly. We just have to keep doing it. Find the last bodies of those people and keep an eye on them. When they need to awaken the divine fire and cast the palace of life, that person should be able to reappear the time and space of the holy path. In the Dark Vault, I have thoroughly studied the forbidden path created by that person. Even after the forbidden road was created, the cultivation system in the Dark Dome was redefined. Dark creatures are following the forbidden road, but they are based on darkness. Therefore, they know the forbidden ways very well. The forbidden road, in the Shenmue, which is the realm of immortal seeds, will accommodate the seeds of immortality. And in the casting realm after the realm of divine fire, you need to use holy objects to cast the palace of life. Subakian realized the immortal seed, and that person reappeared the time and space of immortal Deo. When other people he cared about entered the realm of Fate Palace, will the time and space of the holy path reappear? The stopper's eyes were filled with expectations. Even though the current one has lost the origin of immortality, his realm is still unstable, he may fall, and there may be flaws. They still dare not move. Need to do it step by step. Understood. The Silent One nodded. Now, what they have to do is to find those people who are similar to Subakian. They will continue to advance on the complete forbidden path. Snipe at them, test and challenge that person's bottom line step by step, and force that person to keep taking action. This is a woodcutting situation. The stopper smiled and said. The so-called cutting wood means approaching the opponent's bottom line little by little. You only need to get closer every time, it's like cutting sausages. The Silent One said. I'll ask everyone to move and look for others. He nodded and said. By the way, those daring ants back then can move now. After all, our Dark Dome takes action directly. If one accidentally detonates it, the risk factor is too high, it would be much better to let them do such a thing. The Silent One said. I'll have people call the Fire Emperor and the Wood Emperor. Then, let my two disciples take them there and hide behind the scenes. This will be a foolproof strategy. The Fire Emperor and the Wood Emperor were the only two great emperors who attacked the darkness together with the Xuanhuan Emperor court. The five elements were all enlightened by the earth, and the Water Emperor, the Gold Emperor, and the Earth Emperor all chose go. Only the Fire and Wood Emperors chose to fight, but the ending was very miserable, and they were buried in darkness, just like the one on the dark throne. Became a dark creature. This time I want to take action against the person I care about, so naturally it would be most appropriate for them to do it. Immediately, the Silent One was silent for a moment, using the power of silence to communicate with the other side of the dark dome. The message was conveyed without words. The Fire Emperor and the purpose will be here soon. The Silent One spoke. What level has your silence reached? The Stopper opened his mouth and said. First senior brother, second senior brother, and I are all looking forward to your silent way. The Silent One said. I have conquered my desire to fight. Now, let's wait for Yushin and Xuanhuan to return. He just finished speaking. Master, Yushin and the others are back. At this time, the voices of other disciples had already come. I saw Yutian and Xuanhuan walking into the darkness. They looked numb and said nothing, just like wood. Senior brother Yushin. Junior sister Xuanhuan. Have you successfully obtained the true meaning of the devil? Everyone spoke excitedly. However, Yushin and Xuanhuan said nothing. It looks like it must have been successful. I can't understand their thoughts at all, it's amazing. The lustful look in senior brother Yushin's eyes has completely disappeared. Junior sister Xuanhuan, this silver baby, now looks even more pure and pure, as if she doesn't eat fireworks. Like a nun. It's similar to senior brother Emojan, it seems stable. Everyone was amazed at the appearance of Yutian and Xuanhuan. The Silent One also looked over, but he suddenly became confused. How? It's like this again. Just like Silent War, I actually can't see through the other person's thoughts. It's so strange. Junior brother, do you feel the true meaning of Emo Deo? He asked with some confusion. He didn't know much about Emo Deo, but he had a vague feeling, something wasn't quite right. The silent man heard the words and said bravely. Senior brother, it's no problem, this is the true meaning of Silent Deo. Immediately, he waved his big hand, and the curtain of silence covered all the other disciples, and he entered his own realm of silence. The Deo Jing land was released, and 9 dark stars reflected each other. One of the stars was already like an unexplorable mysterious place. That was after absorbing the true meaning of Emojan's silent Deo and calming down the desires represented by the big star. At this moment, the Silent One directly brought Xuanhuan and Yutian into his Taoist scenery. He absorbed the true meaning of the two people's silent Tao. What a woman! He murmured, and Yushin stepped into the big star that he represented as a good woman. On the dark star, the mysterious aura and Yushin merged into one. At this moment, the Silent One suddenly felt a feeling of death in his heart. He felt as if he had entered the state of a sage, and his desire for good women completely dissipated. He even felt that he was actually starting to wither. Wrong. This kind of, why doesn't it look like a peaceful change of mind after having tasted the beauties in the world? Instead, it seems like, being frightened to death and unable to bring up that kind of desire anymore. Damn, Yushin, what have you experienced? The silent man suddenly panicked. He had to control his lust for women, but that didn't mean that he wanted to become an impotent man or a eunuch. However, this change is now irreversible. At the same time, at this moment, another state of mind suddenly emerged in my mind. This state of mind was like a prodigal girl whose heart was destroyed. She was no longer interested in that kind of thing. She was sad, desperate, and miserable. No. Damn, forget about impotence, claustrophobia. Feeling the changes in his body, Emoje suddenly lost his mind. Damn it, What has Xuanhuan been through again? Claustrophobia. The key is, he is not a woman, the part of claustrophobia is not right. Depend on. What the hell? He was almost going crazy, but soon, he was completely occupied by these two states of mind. The wheels of silence had started, and he was unable to compete at all. After a long, long time. In the Tau scenery of the Silent One, 3 huge dark stars have been integrated into the Silent Tau. The Silent One recovered himself, but at this moment, his eyes were full of confusion. Seems like something is going to go wrong. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1169. Small Village. At night, the banquet has begun. All kinds of delicacies have been prepared. Xuanhuan was extremely moved after seeing Li Fan's delicious food for a long time. Wu Dade, on the other hand, was gnawing bones with the big black dog, and mumbled to suggest that Li Fan eat dog meat hot pot. The second uncle, Uncle Wu, and others were all drinking. After the banquet, the villagers gathered together to roast the big bird, and everyone drank and drank together by the bonfire. Tonight, Li Fan finally no longer had to fight with the second uncle and Uncle Zhang to get them drunk. After all, those 2 lamps were brought back by his disciples and had never passed through the hands of the villagers, which made Li Fan feel relieved. While holding Xiaobai and feeding her delicious food, Li Fan drank wine with everyone. Hey, it's a pity that the great master dancer can't come back. According to what he said back then, if we follow what he left, our village will have undergone big changes. The second uncle was still feeling emotional while drinking wine, recalling the dance master very much. What big change? Li Fan asked with a smile. The second uncle took a sip of old wine and said with a heavy tone. Either there will always be peace, or our village will be destroyed. No one can survive, the village will be destroyed, every tree will die. When Li Fan heard this, he smiled slightly and said. Second uncle, don't worry, it won't happen. I am here. The second uncle also smiled sadly, shook his head and said. Everything that the dancing master said is true, however, with you in the village these years, it is indeed peaceful. I think how chaotic it was back then. Come, drink. After 3 rounds of drinking, the villagers finally began to disperse, and the second uncle and Uncle Zhang also went home. Ming Tianbei and others also got up. He and his people were going to pull weeds mysteriously. They were about to enter the fairyland. Li Fan, as always, hugged Xuanhuan and Gongya back, and then dragged Long Zixuan, Zhiguyuking, and Wu Dade back. Li Fan sat in the small courtyard, under the peach tree, holding the kitten in his arms, watching the kitten sleeping soundly, and gently scratched the kitten's nose with his hand. The village was destroyed and people died. He murmured, thinking about the second uncle's words, suddenly stood up, picked up a peach tree leaf, and pondered without moving. He wanted to find some answers by picking leaves and searching for people. But, in the end he gave up. He even believes that everything depends on man-made efforts, and he doesn't believe in destiny. He took the little kitten to the study room and looked at the 4 ancient bronze lamps and an immortal calendar for a long time. Meow meow. Xiaobai seemed to be a little awake, holding his hand with her little paws, very clingy. Little lazy cat. Li Fan couldn't help but smile and said. If you leave home, I don't know if you can survive outside. When Bai Xiaoqing heard this, her big eyes were stunned for a moment, and then she hugged Li Fan tighter. Li Fan said nothing more and finally left the study. And after he left, among the 4 lamp wicks, 4 figures appeared. The 4 figures are exactly the same as Li Fan. At this moment, the ancient yellowed book on the bookshelf trembled with all its strength, as if it wanted to fall from the bookshelf to extinguish the black light. But among the 4 wicks, the 4 young men suddenly glanced at the ancient book. The ancient book was immediately forced back, as if it was about to fall to the ground from the other direction of the bookshelf. At this moment, a rusty longsword hanging on the wall suddenly chirped softly. Only then did the ancient book stand still, but on the table, the wicks of the 4 lamps were still burning. In the small courtyard, the power of darkness is getting stronger and stronger. The old hen looked sideways into the study, her eyes full of fear, and said, "If all the lamps of darkness are lit, there is nothing we can do. The universe-burning formation used by the Dark Dome to deal with the Master may really happen again. The key is that the Master has abandoned the origin of immortality. Now, his realm seems to have fallen." In the small courtyard, the wind blew, but the atmosphere seemed so heavy. What exactly does the Master want to do? Take the initiative to gather the lamps that ignite the fire of darkness, and also abolish his martial arts? The old hen was full of confusion and looked towards the peach tree. All this cannot be explained. Even Peach Tree was silent for a long time before saying, "Don't think too much. Don't forget who your master's opponent is. We may not be able to win in any way you and I can understand. Just trust the master. All you and I can do is follow." The old hen also sighed. "I haven't had a fight in many years. How about letting me fight those bodies of darkness?" At this time, in the pond, the voice of the true Dragon King suddenly sounded, full of fighting intent. The other real dragons also roared accordingly. "Let's fight! Let's fight!" However, the old hen just said coldly, "You can go if you want, you don't need to tell us. Anyway, even if the fish dies, the owner can still use it to feed the dog. It won't be wasted." Hearing this, Zhenlong paused and said, "We are all fellow Taoists, don't you want to help?" Its tone is a little timid. After all, the body of darkness was once beheaded by the Master. In a sense, it was also Li Fan. "If you fight, you will die. Unless we all go together, maybe we can save our lives. One can still support you, but now there are 4, all the existences in the yard combined can guarantee that your true dragon will not die, which is good." The old hen showed no mercy and said, "Go and give it a try. Die and feed it to the dogs." After hearing this, the real dragon suddenly became angry, suddenly turned his head and stared at the big black dog pretending to sleep, and shouted, "Xuanhuan, you want to eat this dragon? Come on, come and fight with this dragon." In the kennel, the big black dog that was pretending to sleep suddenly raised its head in confusion. "What the hell, the dragon and the phoenix are quarreling, and he suffers." Fortunately, at this time, Doshu had already spoken and said, "That's all, let's let Tuguyuking and the others enter the immortal seed first." Tuguyuking, Xuanhuan, and Wu Dade have also succeeded, but they are just too drunk tonight. The note on the peach tree moved slightly, and in the small courtyard, the martial arts Tianxinlian in the pond and the everlasting fire tree on one side suddenly disappeared. As for Xuanhuan and Tuguyuking, who were sleeping soundly, the Taoist landscape was naturally released, and the immortal seeds entered. Wu Dade, on the other hand, seemed to be sleepwalking into the kitchen, scooping up a lot of pot ashes and swallowing them with well water. His realm of breath's oil is extremely strange. 9 days of breath's oil, what comes is pot ashes. Then, the boundless land and boundless ocean evolved. A huge molten gold ancestral tree slowly entered his Taoist landscape. Even Gong Ya, in his sleep, opened the Taoist landscape, and in the vegetable field, many plants flew in. There are radishes, cucumbers, eggplants, etc. Her Taoist landscape is just like planting a vegetable patch. That night, they entered fairyland in their dreams. At the same time, in Zhuzhou, countless cultivators have entered the immortal land and gained a lot of opportunities. Across the world, countless people have recultivated the foundation of immortal Dao and obtained immortal seeds. The golden age has arrived, we have obtained the immortal seed. Great, great. The world is cheering. And somewhere inside a hidden giant door, he may still be alive. A solemn voice sounded from the gate of 10,000 Deos. Good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Xuanhuan. Chapter 1170. It can recall the time and space of the immortal way, and also turn the dark floating soil in the time and space of the immortal way back into the fairyland full of the origin of the immortal way. He is the only one in all eternity who can do this. In the gate of 10,000 ways, a voice whispers. At that time, Emperor Xuanhuan and others were all dead, and he had to face the darkness, but he died in the darkness. Could it be that he didn't die? What would we do if he hadn't died? The being in the gate of 10,000 Deos is hesitating. The miracles that are now manifesting in heaven and earth are undoubtedly indicating that that person may still be alive. Previously, they chose to be completely stubborn, aloof, and unconcerned with worldly affairs. But if that person is still alive, their choice may not be so wise. The origin of immortality has appeared. At this time, a solemn voice sounded, saying, this means that he should have returned the origin of the immortal path he received to the immortal land. When he was in full bloom, he might still be able to resist the darkness, but now, the origin is missing. He has no advantage when facing the darkness, right? After hearing this, other beings also fell silent. Indeed so. Keep waiting and see, there's no need to rush to stand in line now. Eventually, the gate of 10,000 ways disappeared. In the darkness of nowhere, Fire Emperor and Wood Emperor are here. The silent man suddenly turned around. In the distant dark door, two existences appeared. I saw that they were two women, both with good looks. Although they were both wearing long black skirts, and their eyes were sometimes filled with black mist, they could not conceal their peerless elegance. These two people were from the era of the Forbidden World's heavenly emperor. They once fought against the two great emperors of darkness together with the Xuanhuan emperor. Fire Emperor, Wood Emperor. In that battle, the Xuanhuan emperor and the Xuanhuan emperor court led by him were almost completely destroyed. The Fire Emperor and the Wood Emperor also fell, infected by darkness and turned into dark creatures. Walking in front of the Silent One and the Silent One, the Dark Fire Emperor and the Dark Wood Emperor bowed and saluted. The purpose of letting you come here this time is to find the last bodies of those people, and then destroy them. The Silent One spoke calmly. Fire Emperor and Wood Emperor both nodded and said, we will give light to their darkness. The Silent One turned his head, looked at his disciples, and said, Motai, Zheng, you two will go too. The Fire Emperor and the Wood Emperor are just puppets outside. This temptation and advance may very well arouse that person's dissatisfaction. They are mainly used to reduce the intensity and prevent that person from going crazy. But the main thing is that they still need their own people to do it. Motai is a fat man with a fat head and a fat head. He represents the gluttonous side of Motai. Zheng is a shrewd and silent man. His eyes seem to be extremely calm, as if he is always looking for flaws in others. He represents the argumentative side of Zheng. As commanded, the two of them saluted the Silent One, and then left with the Fire Emperor and the Wood Emperor. Not long after, they had arrived in the Forbidden World. Just when he arrived here, the Fire Emperor suddenly whispered, I feel, the other me, is completing the fairy seed. Emperor Mu was also deep in thought and said, me too. Hearing this, Zheng beside him couldn't help but be puzzled and said, you two have died completely, and you have turned into darkness, how could another one appear? Motai said, find them, eat them. His fat face looked extremely ferocious, and he said, The other body of the two of them must have fine skin and tender meat, and it tastes particularly sweet. Mo Zheng smiled slightly and said, "Yes, before you eat them, I will convert them first, convince them, and let them understand that darkness is the real destination." There was a desire to win in his eyes. He practices the art of poisoning the mind, so he likes to argue and confuse people's hearts through arguments. And the result of arguing and bewitching is conversion. Let all opponents become your own believers. Immediately, their four great emperors headed towards the direction they sensed. Now, the vast fairyland stands above the forbidden world. In just a few days, countless cultivators have successfully entered the immortal land and found immortal seeds. This vast land is full of vitality and is filled with various immortal species, spiritual grasses, immortal trees, etc. for the world to use. At the same time, many people settled directly in the fairy land, bringing a different kind of vitality to the fairy land. At this moment, on a high mountain in immortal land, a girl was covered in a flame-like dress, and a fire tree was planted in her Taoist landscape. This woman is clearly Huo Ling-er. Beside her, Mu Qianing, Mu Wanqing, Wu Xiaoqan and others are also in the process of completing the realm of immortality. Mu Qianing planted an extremely rare Taiyan banana, while Mu Wanqing planted the mother vine of all things. What Wu Xiaoqan planted was a sunflower, like a blazing flame. What they got were all immortal treasures that only existed in ancient records, second only to the 10 immortal spirits such as the flat peach, the original divine grape, the martial arts Tianxinlian, and the divine blood grass. At the moment when the immortal seeds were planted, images of time and space flowed past the three of them. Next to Huo Ling-er, there were pictures of heavenly fire crisscrossing the sky. A generation of empresses traveled by fire, leaving fire and warmth in the world. Around Mu Wanqing, patches of ancient forest were emerging, with mountain-like vines winding around the sky, full of endless vitality. Mu Qianing is even more astonishing. The two huge leaves of Taiyan banana are filled with the scent of Taiyan and sun, making her very mysterious, as if an illusory world has descended. Wu Xiaoqan was similar to her, but completely opposite, exuding the aura of the Tao of the Sun. Fire Emperor, Wood Emperor, and Taiyan Empress, Sun Emperor. On the side, the great Emperor of Samsara, black and white, appeared at some unknown time. He did not plant the seeds of immortality because his way was very special. He used the underworld as the source of water and the underworld as the soil. The flowers of reincarnation were watered by the origin of the immortal way. Nothing comes into being, blooms naturally, and has a flawless foundation. He murmured and observed with the eyes of reincarnation. He already understood the identities of Mu Qianing and the other four people. They were all the most powerful emperors in the forbidden world, and they all died in the darkness. No wonder I am favored by Senior Li. Mu Qianing, Huo Ling-er, Mu Wanqing, and Wu Xiaoqan are the people who have been closest to the small mountain village at different stages in the past few years. They have all received many opportunities from the small mountain village and have built a strong foundation. Mu Qianing and others finally woke up slowly. You have to look at past lives. Huo Ling-er murmured and said. In the past life of immortal seed pregnancy, it turned out that I was the Fire Emperor. Mu Qianing also said. The past is like running water, untraceable, but it has made me understand a lot. Black and White said. The Shenhuo continent and the Lingmu continent have both become extinct and are still desolate. The Taiyan continent and the Sun continent are occupied by the newly born Moon Emperor and Sun Emperor. Wu Xiaoqan stood up and said. Let's go recover it. Although he is only in the Shenmu realm, now, he has changed from the childishness he had when he first met the small mountain village and looks heroic. The Black and White Emperor nodded and said. That's fine. Immediately, the four people stood up and left the fairy land. Mu Qianing went to Taiyan continent, Wu Xiaoqan went to Taiyang continent, but Huo Ling-er and Mu Wanqing were traveling together. Because Shenhuo continent and Muling continent are adjacent to each other, and the two of them once achieved enlightenment in the same place, the first fire mountain. The first fire mountain is located at the junction of Shenhuo continent and Lingmu continent. According to legend, during the fire era, the Wood Emperor and the Fire Emperor joined hands to ignite the human fire in the first fire mountain, so it was named the first fire mountain. Fantasy, I'm really not an unparalleled expert. Author, Gui Xin. Chapter 1171. Do you know the legend of our great mountain of fire? Of course, who doesn't know the birthplace of human fire? I heard that strange phenomena have been appearing in Xuanhuan mountain during this period. There is a grass growing against the sky, and on that blade of grass, there is actually a Buddha preaching, and everyone who listens has enlightenment. It's true. The sutra that the monk mentioned is exactly the Holy Spirit Divine Fire Sutra created by the ancient Fire Emperor and Wood Emperor when they attained enlightenment in the past. Now, our Shenhuo continent and Lingmu continent are both spreading the word that strange things descended from heaven. Elephant, the human fire will reappear. In Shenhuo continent and Lingmu continent, all kinds of information went viral during this period. These two continents suffered the greatest losses in the battle against the Dark Emperor's court in the past. There used to be darkness, and with a single blow from afar, most of the creatures in this continent were killed, and at the center of that blow, the first fire, the mountains and all living creatures were extinct. Even though endless years have passed, these two continents are still shrouded in a certain shadow. No great emperor is willing to carry out enlightenment in these two continents, and the mark of Tianxin has always been attributed to creation. Therefore, the two continents have always been regarded as barren lands, with only some remaining weak practicing sects. The imperial court does not exist, and even the kings of heaven and earth are extremely rare. I have planted the immortal seed. If I want to walk the complete forbidden path, the realm of divine fire, I need human fire. This is the holy fire. Only when the sacred fire is rekindled can the path forward of the forbidden path be illuminated. Let's go and light the holy fire. If we can succeed, maybe we can get a glimpse of the opportunity to become emperor. Because of the strange phenomenon that occurred deep in the first fire mountain, almost the entire Shenhuo continent and Lingmu continent's masters were gathering towards the first fire mountain. Grandpa, what is human fire? On a certain road, a little girl followed the white-haired old man and asked questions. The old man said kindly, "The fire of the world is the holy flame of Tao Tao that is achieved by people's aspirations. It can also be said to be the fire of faith. Whatever the world believes in, the fire of the world is what it is." Hearing this, the little girl became even more confused and said, "It sounds so complicated." The old man smiled and said, "For example, my grandpa has believed all his life that good will be rewarded with good and evil will be rewarded with evil. Doing good is the best thing. If everyone in the world is like grandpa, then goodness itself will become a fire in the world and can guide the world. Only by finding the meaning of life can we create the true taboo life palace, which is the destination and meaning of life. In fact, these are the last two realms of the five elements realm, divine fire and casting. Only the flame that shines with the brilliance of humanity is the true divine fire. Only such a sacred fire can build the palace of the meaning of life." The old man murmured. But the little girl still seemed to understand. At the same time, various rumors emerged one after another on the various roads leading to Xuanhuan mountain. Zhu Meng, who comes from the divine fire continent, is known as the Little Saint. He has achieved some success in practicing the Divine Fire Sutra of living beings. He preaches the way of benevolence and a group of believers have gathered around him to light the holy fire of benevolence for him. Han Shenfa of Lingmu continent is also known as the Little Sage. He advocates the rule of law in the world. He also has many followers who want to ignite the fire of law. The most refreshing one is Sumo. He analyzed the rules of heaven and earth and believed that the science of benevolence and law are just rotten human studies. Only the study of nature is eternal. He wants to ignite the fire of nature for the world. After the Holy Spirit Fire Sutra spread throughout the world, many powerful people who had achieved success in practice and became enlightened began to create their own doctrines to light the holy fire for the world. And Xuanhuan continent and Lingmu continent happened to not have a high imperial court that could accommodate different ideas and theories. Therefore, for a time, 100 schools of thought contended and 100 flowers bloomed. Although they were called barren lands for spiritual practice, the confrontation of ideas was unprecedented. Zhu Meng, Su Mo, Han Zhenfa, and others were named minor saints. They preached along the way, and more believers came from far and wide, heading towards the Xuanhuan mountain. On a certain avenue. Benevolence. Law. Nature. A man in black robe smiled slightly, with a hint of winning in his eyes, and said, "It's interesting, I want to save them." The way of cultivating one's mind in silence requires constantly beguiling the world and converting believers. The more determined a person is in the Dao, the more advanced his Dao will be after being deceived. Next to him, Motai complained. These two continents are barren lands, and they are all poor and backward cultivators. The life of the poor is too bitter and not good to eat. Next to him, the Dark Fire Emperor said softly. Don't worry, I can feel it, the other me is coming too, she will be delicious. When Motai heard this, his eyes suddenly lit up. The Daodi way he cultivates requires swallowing up all kinds of powerful sources, powerful supernatural powers, physical constitutions, etc. in this world, so that he can achieve a flawless Taoist body and reach the peak. The great mountain of beginning fire. On a certain road, Huo Ling and Mu Wanqing have also arrived. Benevolence, law, nature. Mu Wanqing murmured. In this life, what should we use to ignite the fire in the world? Huo Ling pondered and murmured. Whether it is benevolence or law, it cannot escape human nature. In the face of interests such as power, wealth, and status, one is vulnerable and as fragile as paper. Of course the way of nature is eternal. The little sage named Su Mo is indeed on the right path, unfortunately, exploring the mysteries of heaven and earth and looking for the laws of nature is a path destined to be taken only by geniuses. Mu Wanqing also nodded and said. Besides, geniuses can also be killed. In barren lands like Xuanhuan continent and Lingmu continent, geniuses can still have a place to survive. On the contrary, in Yuzhu, Kaiwan continent and other places, as long as the imperial court rules the world, geniuses can survive. Then I can only become a slave of the imperial court. Huo Ling thought deeply and said, let's go to Xuanhuan mountain first. Immediately, they also headed towards the Xuanhuan mountain. At this moment, the mountain started to fire. This is a barren mountain. In ancient times, it had lush vegetation and countless creatures. It was a rare paradise in the world. Later, the Fire Emperor Mu Emperor and the Zhantian Emperor died in the darkness together. This place was struck from a distance by a being in the darkness, and the place turned into scorched earth. On the barren, cold, and blackened Xuanhuan mountain, not even the wind fluctuated. But deep in the Xuanhuan mountain, on a hill, there was suddenly a faint green. After looking carefully, I realized that it was actually a piece of green grass. The green grass spreads all the way from the hills to a valley. The closer you get to the valley, the more lush the grass grows. When you reach the valley, the green grass is as tall as half a person, and every leaf is green. There was even a vague white mist rising. At this moment, deep in the valley, a farmer was tending to this piece of green grass. He was sweating profusely, and after a long time, he said, Junior brother Ching Chen, don't sleep, let's start today's teaching. If we light the fire that does not stain the world, we will not be able to open the restrictions of this place, and we will not be able to get those 2 lamps. On the other side, under a thatched cottage, a monk was sitting cross-legged in meditation. Hearing the call, he opened his eyes and said expectantly, Senior brother Lu Rang, before I lecture on the scriptures, how about you listen to my preaching first? Hearing this, Lu Rang immediately waved his hand and said, "Forget it, don't even think about trying to persuade me. I only have such a small hobby in my life, and you still want me to give up and lose everything with you? Don't even think about it." When Qing Chen heard this, he couldn't help but shake his head and said, "Senior brother Lu Rang, the world is green and the darkness is green, this is no small hobby." As he said that, the two began to cooperate. Lu Rang took out his pot of grass. The shadow of the grass was shocking, while Qing Chen sat cross-legged on the grass. The shadow of Su was projected beyond the entire Shiwo mountain, and then he began to lecture in a sacred voice. "That's, the Holy Spirit God's fire scripture. This place is sealed, and it can only be opened by igniting a human fire, but it has been several months, and I don't know when I will get the lamp of origin." Lu Rang looked deep into the valley and murmured. He and Qing Chen landed here together. However, this place is sealed, and they have obtained the Holy Spirit God Fire Sutra. They can only open it by spreading the sutra to the world and rekindling the fire of the world here. I hope other brothers and sisters won't be too anxious, otherwise, we will be delayed. He is a little anxious. Good night.